Hey Mike, we got a book here? What's this all about?
Well, this is one of the newer Bigfoot books. I'm not quite finished reading it yet. Christopher Noel is the author, and it's a book about habituation. This book came out actually prior to this other book that I recently spoke about, Autumn's book, Enoch, a book by Autumn Williams about a habituation case out of Florida. Now, the reason I'm showing them both is because that seems to be what's of interest in the Bigfoot world right now, and what's on the cutting edge, and what the latest scuttlebutt and talk is about habituations, and whether or not those occur, how much of the stories that we've been told are true, and how many of them aren't. And I can point out while I'm at it, and I will, I think, show you a couple of more books that have appeared over the years with claims of habituation. You know, and in the past, these two books, for example, were both pretty much shrugged aside and ignored to a great degree, and sloughed off as being total fabrications and bunk. And who knows, they may still turn out to be. I can't say one way or another. Except that there's some researchers who did some work on this story and actually found some corroborating evidence from DNA and hair samples taken at this site that seem to match up with some others. But nonetheless, here we have now 4 books all about Bigfoot habituation scenarios where people have conversed with them, spent time with them, you know, had a meal with one, this, that, and the other thing. And what's interesting is, once again, let's go back to the 2 more recent ones. These 2 recent books have been much more well-received than the previous ones were. Maybe it's just because they came later and we've had time to get used to the idea now, and so it doesn't seem so outrageous as it once was. I don't know. Maybe it's because the people who are writing these books have quite a bit of respect, and they're known in the research community to begin with, whereas the people who did the earlier books were either not known at all as part of the Bigfoot research community, or you know, were thought of as just newbies and didn't have any skills yet. But what is interesting, though, is the approach. This one is a story told to Autumn by this fellow who says he befriended a skunk ape in Florida. Well, that's typically they call Bigfoot type things skunk apes in Florida. That's like the generic term for Bigfoot in Florida. Not to be excused with, not to be mixed up with the nape. This was a concept that was thrown out by Loren Coleman a number of years back, a North American ape. And what that really refers to is the fact that apes, being tropical animals, when an animal like a chimpanzee or an orangutan is let loose in North America, they tend to end up on the Gulf Coast, because that's the most tropical part of the North American continent. And these are tropical animals. So we do know that people bring in exotic pets, and then they get rid of them in forests and so forth, and a lot of them end up on the Gulf Coast, and so there's a mixture of these North American apes, so to speak, mixed in with these skunk apes, which are purported to be more Bigfoot type things. Anyway, Mike claims that he's spent time with these skunk apes and so forth. And what's interesting is, in this book, Christopher Noel talks about the BFRO's methodology, which is to go out in the woods at night and to tree knock, to make calls, to play calls of recordings of Bigfoot screams and so forth. And he refers to that as a form of habituation. And I had never really thought of it as that, but you know, he has a point. And you do this enough times and constant enough, then pretty soon the Bigfoot start to recognize you and get used to you, and maybe you would then have a better chance of getting some feedback or a response. So he talks about the BFRO methodology of doing habituation, and then he also talks about, and I think just pretty much transcribes in their own words, the stories of people that he's interviewed who have habituated Bigfoot in various parts of the country where he's gone doing research for the BFRO. And most of his work has been done on the East Coast, because he lives in Vermont. So it's a northern East Coast perspective primarily. And so he talks about wood knocking and the other techniques that we use. And interestingly enough, over here in Enoch, Mike talks about tree knockers in kind of a negative way. He kind of disses people who go out and knock trees. I guess the point being that in his experience, the skunk apes don't tree knock, I presume. So he thinks that the concept of going out and hitting a tree to try and contact one of these beings is silly and that it is unnecessary and it doesn't work. And so he refers to these guys as tree knockers as kind of a negative term. But that's endemic to humanity, this tendency to separate, polarize, and then call others by name if they don't agree. So it's just par for the course. I'm not surprised. But there it is, happening again. But it's a small part of what they're saying. What they do agree on in the main is that these things are sentient and that you can have interaction with them. And I think that's important. And Christopher Noel has put up a video and I tweeted about that. He put up a video where he stated the reason why we should get to know what a Sasquatch is and get to know them, because of all the things we're going to learn from that. We're going to learn about the ultimate minimalism, that's a fact. We're going to learn how to live off the land without having to have so much stuff. I think this is an important lesson to learn for the future. You know, if the ultimate cataclysm ever comes in Armageddon, we're going to have to revert back to some of our old techniques, and I think then the meek will inherit the earth. So knowing how to live like a Sasquatch might be an important thing down the road somewhere. Who knows? Anyway, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing to think about Bigfoot habituation.